I don't wanna ruin this one. This type of love don't always come and go. I don't wanna ruin.
So I figured I'd start the video off with good vibes. I just went on a ski trip this past weekend. I live in Pennsylvania, so we're skiing on hills out here compared to out west or farther up north. I did that because working in the ICU, it's not always pleasant times, so I figured we'll all start with good vibes, good times, and then we'll kind of go into the darker side. So working in the ICU, my eyes have definitely opened up. I've seen way too much death within the 3 years that I've worked there. So I'm an RT, a respiratory therapist. I work in the ICU, the ER, whenever there's a trauma, we do that. I work on the floors. I'm all over the place. I also work in the NICU. I work with kids, pediatric patients. So that's just a little bit if you don't know what exactly a respiratory therapist is. We work everywhere. So I mainly work in the ICU or the ER, just because I like the more critical stuff, the fast-paced stuff, compared to doing stuff on the floors where it's a little bit more slower. So we mainly run the ventilators, or when anyone has some kind of breathing issue, that's when we get involved. So as you can imagine, we are dealing with the sickest of the sickest patients. Of what a ventilator does is that's basically life support. We are breathing for the patient. So many times, or not many times, sometimes the patients don't come off the life support. They end up passing away, or the family decides that there's no quality of life, that we're going to go ahead and let the patient pass. So sometimes that's what we do, is we end up pulling the plug per se. That's one of the hardest parts of being a respiratory therapist. Is I have seen plenty of patients' families cry and see their loved ones pass. It's just crazy to me how working in the ICU has just opened my eyes and just let me see that life could be taken away in an instant. Sorry about, there's some Amish guy shooting in the background. I think he's trying to shoot a squirrel. I'm out for a run and I just decided to record. I walked by and he's like pointing up in the air, shooting something into the tree. Anyway, that's what that noise is. Where was I? Back to working in the ICU consistently. So over the past 3 years, I learned that life can be taken like that. So like driving, for example. I still do speed sometimes, I will admit that. However, there are more times where I am a safer driver. I'm more cautious. My friends want to do something stupid. I'm like, no, that's not a good idea. I was in the ICU one time and this kid did this, or this guy did this. Or it's just amazing how many times people are doing something in their home and they fall down the stairs and they have a head bleed and game over right there. Like, they're not who they were for the rest of their life. Plus, with seeing cancer, for example, how cancer can just come and take over somebody, because it's growing in you and you don't know it's there until you know it's there, and sometimes it's just too late and you find out you have 6 months to live. I think that is also one of the hardest parts, is having family members see babies die, kids die, just any loved one die, just hearing the screams and the cries of loved ones. It sucks, you know? It's another reason why I'm out here running, so I can release my stress, because working in the ICU is kind of stressful. Somebody has to do it though. Somebody has to work in the ICU. Somebody has to work with these patients and just make sure that we can do everything that we can possibly do to either get them better or let them die peacefully and with compassion. So that is definitely the con of working in the ICU, is a lot of death. Like I said, I do work with some of the sickest patients, so it is a great feeling when you work with somebody for a month and you just keep working with them every single day and they walk out of there and they're a brand new person. So we had an old man that fell when cardiac arrest, and he had an open heart surgery then, a bunch of other stuff, and he was in the hospital for probably a month and a half before we finally let him go. He ended up going to rehab, but he came back a year and a half or so later. He told us that he got to see his granddaughter walk down the aisle. He's very thankful for all of us. And that's just something that can't be replaced. It just makes you feel good inside. It lets you realize why you're doing what you're doing. and just makes you love your job a little bit more. Now, COVID has taken a massive turn for many nurses. Many nurses don't like working in healthcare anymore. I can make a whole other video talking about that, but it takes a toll on you because some people are very good at work life and home life. They don't let the two cross. Other people, they take work life with them to home and home life with them to work, and if you have a bad home life or something's going on at home, you take that to work, and that's even more stress on you because sometimes working in the ICU is very stressful. When you take that to home, and maybe you're putting that stress on your kids, or you're taking it out on somebody else besides letting all that stress out. So like I said, running, that's what I do anyway. I have worked at 3 different hospitals, and no matter where you go, no matter who you work with, it's all the same. COVID has been slightly different at some of the hospitals, but still, a whole lot of death. That was one of the things, for me, I got at least a year under my belt before COVID happened, and yes, I was good with the death and dying. However, I believe COVID made me more comfortable with it, which it shouldn't be that way. And this is just for anybody who works in the ICU. You get very comfortable with dying. So, people do die, cycle of life. However, when people tell me, I'm like, it happens. Or, I know somebody who has a kid, and their kid just fell and gashed open their eye real bad, and if you don't see that on a regular basis, it's scary. Like, that's bad. However, I was kind of just like, I've seen worse, and I was concerned, yes. However, I wasn't as concerned as somebody who does not work in healthcare. So, do I always want to work in the ICU, or do I always want to be a respiratory therapist? No. I explained that in a lot of my other videos. However, while I am an RT, I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to help more people get into RT, and I'm just going to be the best respiratory therapist I can. I go ahead and explain what I'm doing in all my other videos and how long I plan to stay a respiratory therapist, what my goals, all that good stuff. So make sure you check that out. I am also the owner of a supplement company called Mark's Hybrid Supplements, or MHS. So I have that going for me. Hopefully that takes off a little bit. Right now I only have pre-workout, but we'll see. Just started it. For the people who have worked 30-some years in the ICU, I mean, all the power to them, but I can't do that. There's just too much stress, too much dying, I would say. Plus, when I work in the ICU, I'm going all the time because, like I said, the patients are in there because they're very, very sick, and you're running around like crazy because one moment you got a patient coding, next you have one that's detoxing from whatever they're addicted to. It's just not a good time. I do have plenty of good days in the ICU. I do like working in the ICU. That is my favorite place besides the ER or the trauma bay. But overall, I don't want to do it forever.